Hello everybody, welcome to this week's recipe. I'm gonna show you how to make lemon meringue pies. We're gonna start with the bottom layer, and this is the pastry for our pies. This is called pâte sucrée in patisserie terms. So I'm gonna start by making a simple dough. I have room temperature unsalted butter, and I'm gonna cream that together with some icing sugar, which will give our crust a nice and delicate texture. I'm also going to use one whole egg, and for the dry ingredients I have some all-purpose flour and a little bit of salt. So I'm starting by creaming my butter, making sure there are no lumps, and then adding my icing sugar. You want to start your mixer at low speed to avoid the sugar going all over your kitchen. Once that's incorporated, you can add your egg. The egg is at room temperature, and this is important because you want to prevent this batter from splitting. You don't want to overmix at this step, so once it's incorporated, that egg, you can add your dry ingredients. Again, I start my mixer on low speed to avoid flour going all over my counter. And the second the flour gets fully incorporated, I stop. You can see that the dough is a little bit sticky, and of course we cannot roll it like this, so we're gonna have to put this in the fridge for it to firm up. I like using cling film for this so I can flatten it, and it's also a nicer way to start rolling when it's something of even thickness and shape. So I'm gonna let this chill in the fridge for about 1 hour, and it should be quite firm by the time you take it out. Now I'm gonna split the dough in half. One half I will use for the bottom of my tart cases, and the other half I will use for the walls of the tart cases. I will roll these two things separately and then just join them together in the tart case. Before you start rolling, make sure that the surface and the rolling pin are generously floured. When I'm rolling dough, I make sure to rotate the dough as I go, so I make sure it doesn't stick to the board. A general rule when it comes to pie crusts is to roll them out to about 1/4 of an inch of thickness. Now this is going to be my actual tart ring, and the good thing is I can just push it onto the dough and make the bottom layer. Now a quick side note, you can use any tart ring that you have. Transfer this to my baking sheet, which I have with a micro-perforated mat, which I love, and I'll show you later why I love this mat. So you can actually put this in the fridge while you work on the sides of the tart ring. And in my case, I have quite a long oval shaped tart ring, so I need to make a really long rectangle for the walls. I'm using a pizza cutter because that's the easiest way I can get a nice and long cut. The only important thing is that your strip is wider than the height of the tart case, so that you have some excess that you can just trim off later. I actually needed to patch a little bit here and there, but the dough is super forgiving, so this actually works out well. And we're gonna trim off the excess with, I have a paring knife here, which is one of the best things to use because it's very thin. Okay, this is ready to go in the fridge for about 15 minutes for it to firm up again. And while that's going, I'm gonna prepare some parchment paper, which you want to make sure fits nicely in your tart case. And now I'm gonna fill it with some pie weights. I have some ceramic baking beans, which are great because they make sure that you have a flat case for your tarts. So after our blind bake, You can remove the pie weights, just be very careful because they're really hot. And you can see that it's cooked, but it's quite pale, so we put this back in the oven so that it gets a golden brown color. And this is our tart case. Now let me show you why I love this micro perforated mat. First of all, I have the same for the tart ring, and look at that pattern. It just looks really professional. Okay, so we can let these cool while we make the lemon curd filling. And this lemony layer is the main flavor of this dessert. You want to have really nice unwaxed lemons, and we're going to use both the juice and the zest. And for this task, I'd like to use one of my favorite kitchen tools, this microplane zester, which really prevents us from grabbing that white part, which is quite bitter. This way you get only the yellow part, and it's full of flavor and zero bitterness. And now we use the same lemons to get the juices out. I'm gonna strain this to avoid getting any seeds. And I'm gonna combine the juice and the zest and bring this whole thing to a boil. While that's happening, I'm gonna hydrate my gelatin. I have a leaf of gelatin here and some cold water, and I'm just gonna let this soak for about 5 to 8 minutes. And while my lemon juice and zest mixture comes to a boil, I'm gonna mix some eggs and sugar together. And then once the juice reaches a gentle boil, we bring this to our egg mixture, and you want to stir vigorously. You don't want to cook your eggs, because then you'll end up with scrambled eggs, and you don't want that. Now this is ready to go back to the heat. But before I do that, I'm gonna strain this. This is just to double check that we don't end up with some eggy bits or all that lemon zest. We want a nice and smooth lemon curd. So on low heat, I'm gonna stir this constantly for about 5 minutes until you reach this consistency. While this is still hot, I'm gonna add the remaining 2 ingredients, the butter and my hydrated gelatin. You know it's fully hydrated if you can squeeze the water out just like so, and all of it feels soft. There are no dry patches. It should instantly melt with the heat, but just stir it completely to make sure there are no gelatin bits in there. And once that's done, we can add our butter. I do 1 tablespoon at a time. And there you go. Look at this gorgeous, smooth, glossy, thick, delicious lemon curd, which is ready to be used for our filling. So let's put these 2 things together. We have our cases ready, and we have a relatively warm lemon curd. It shouldn't be too hot so that it doesn't affect the crust and it doesn't become soggy, but it should be still in fluid form so that it's easier to fill your cases. Just give it a shake so that you get flat surfaces. And this is ready to go into the fridge for about an hour, which gives us plenty of time to work on our third and last component, the meringue. And I'm doing an Italian meringue, which means I have separated the egg whites from the sugar. I will use the sugar with a little bit of water to make a syrup/caramel. And you want to cook this until you reach a soft ball stage, which is about 114 degrees Celsius. And while that's happening, I'm whipping my egg whites until they get nice and foamy. And once the caramel is ready, I pour it on the side of the bowl, gently on low speed. And you want to whip this up until you get medium to stiff peaks, like so. It should be nice and glossy and pipeable. And now we're ready to build our dessert. So I've taken my tarts out of the fridge, and you can see that the lemon curd has fully set. And that means we're ready for our meringue. I've scooped all of my meringue into a piping bag with a round tip. And I'm just gonna pipe all around the tart, like so. You can do whatever shape you want. Now to the funnest part of this whole recipe is to use this blowtorch to finish off that meringue and give it a nice little burnt taste. You don't want to burn them too much. It should be more like a burnt marshmallow type of effect. This is another shape I was trying. And this is the bigger tart case that I had. And that's it. Now I get to cut into this. Just to show you those beautiful layers once again, you have that lemon layer, which should be the dominant flavor. I hope you like this recipe, and if you do, please subscribe to my channel for more.